Good afternoon, and welcome to the CEDS webinar about the version 8 release. The presenters for this webinar are Dwayne Brown and Andrea Hall. Please note that this webinar is being recorded. Because of the number of attendees, phone lines have been muted. If you have any questions or comments as they present, please post it in the chat box. I will now turn it over to Andrea.
Thank you, Nancy. Excuse me. Well, good afternoon, everyone. As Nancy said, I'm Andrea Hall, and I'm the CEDS. Can you guys hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes, sorry about that.
Okay, that's okay. So I'm going to give you a brief rundown of the CEDS tool enhancements that we've implemented with version 8. So the tool enhancements are based on needs identified in part through work we did with North Carolina. North Carolina has a very large data set that the system wasn't able to process successfully. And in addition, several states were having trouble uploading larger files using the data dictionary upload tool. So we have responded to these issues by enhancing these features so that not only North Carolina, but all of you states can benefit from them. The tool enhancements revolve around the Align tool, specifically the data dictionary upload process and the map data formatted for upload report. One of the biggest changes you're going to notice will be seen in the speed of processing uploads and downloads. The file size configuration for both increased to 250 megabytes. And the files will be processed behind the scenes, which allows larger files to be uploaded and reports to be downloaded without the system timing out. Additionally, in addition to the work going on behind the scenes, we also improved the error messages that you will see if there are issues with your data dictionary upload file. So now if your file has errors, you will receive a message that tells you not only what those errors are, but exactly where they are located within your file. So back-end or behind-the-scenes processing means that you can continue to work in other areas of CEDS, including logging out and back in again while your files are processing. The only stipulation is that you can't upload a data dictionary file or run the map data formatted for upload report again while the system is processing another file. Also, since this is all happening behind the scenes, we needed a way to alert you that the file has completed processing. So we added a file status message to the top menu bar. This message will appear immediately after your data dictionary file has uploaded. So when you hover over the file status message, another message will display that indicates either success or failure, which you can then click on to get additional information. This screenshot shows you an example of the file upload success message that you'll get when your data dictionary file has uploaded without errors. Alternatively, this slide shows you what you'll see when there is an error identified in your upload file. So when you click on the file upload error message, a pop-up window is going to display. And this pop-up will show you the exact location within your file where an error message or an anomaly has been identified. So when identifying these, the system is looking to the first entry for an element and any entries following it that are different. The map data formatted for upload report has also been enhanced. So you now have 3 options for downloading the report. You can download it as an Excel file, a CSV file, or a text file. So for those of you that aren't familiar with this report, it's basically a data dump of every field within your Align map, and it's only available as a download. So if you have changes you need to make to your map that you don't want to do manually within the Align tool, you can download this report, make the changes to the file, then upload it again into an existing map or as a new map. You also have the ability to download more than one map at a time when running this report. And as with the data dictionary upload process, we have added a notification to the CEDS menu bar that alerts you when this report is completed processing. If there were no issues encountered, you'll see the message Retrieve Report under File Status on the menu bar. When you click on Retrieve Report, the system will automatically download the report in the file type that you chose. If, however, there are issues that occur that prevent the report from downloading, a pop-up message is going to display. And the pop-up window includes an error message and a link to the Request Assistance page in CEDS. So if you get an error, you can copy the error message, paste it into the Request Assistance entry field, and then send it off to the CEDS support team to troubleshoot. And now I'm going to turn this over to Dwayne Brown, who is going to give us an overview of the version 8 updates to the standard.
Thanks, Andrea. So CEDS version 8, as you can see, had 14 new elements, 136 updated elements, and we deprecated 3 elements. And there were also 171 changes within the domain entity schema. The domain entity schema is the user-friendly model used to locate elements when you're not as familiar with the vocabulary. It lets you look through various domains. These changes make it easier to find certain elements within that location, and it also expands the use of certain already existing elements across other domains to make it easier to find those there as well. The primary areas where elements were updated include the competencies and the credentials domain. The change was to differentiate between a competency or a credential definition versus a competency or a credential assertion. In working with other organizations, there was some confusion as to whether the CEDS elements represented an assertion, which was applied to an actual person, or whether they represented the definition that could then be attributed to any person. And the main mission of CEDS is clarifying the education vocabulary, so we wanted to make sure we had that right since there was some confusion out there. So the credential and competency elements all received the addition of the word definition, which is what represents the CEDS elements best. Other updates include standard option sets such as ISO language and county codes, the SCED codes, or as it's written there, school courses for the exchange of data, course code updates, and then also Native American Tribal Affiliation Code updates. So CEDS does not ever intend to reinvent the wheel, but we include other standards where they intersect with education. And when those organizations update their option sets, then CEDS updates to stay consistent with them, so there's consistency across standards. Other changes, as it indicates there, were from adding elements needed for EDFACT reporting. And I'm going to pull over this screen here so we can take a look. And I wanted to show you a quick live overview of the last 2 slides that were there, but on the CEDS website, so that you can navigate to these areas on your own to see more detail. So there are 2 primary ways to interact with the CEDS elements, either through the domain entity schema or through the elements page directly. And I'm going to take you first to take a look at the domain entity schema, which is what I was talking about earlier, the user-friendly way. So as you can see here, the domain entity schema basically lists out primary domains where elements are contained within. And CEDS is a P20W model, so early learning, K-12, post-secondary, career tech, adult ed, and workforce. These represent the primary domains where, a student would begin early learning and finally make their way ultimately through K-12, post-secondary, and ultimately into the workforce. So education elements exist inside of there. Outside of those 5, we have different things that exist across all of the different domains.
Dwayne?
A student or an individual. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to tell you that it says they're not, just a moment, they're not seeing the CEDS, okay? So hold on 1 second.
Okay. Jump back over. And
So go ahead and,
oh, it stopped.
yeah, use that to share your screen right now. Go ahead.
Okay.
You have to stop sharing Andrea's.
Pod.
Do you see the current pod?
I do see the current pod.
Okay, can you share your screen from there?
But it does inform me that it is being shared in another pod, so I have to stop sharing there before I can, wherever that other pod is.
There you go. Okay, so now, are folks seeing it now? If you can put in the chat.
Multiple attendees are typing.
Yes. Yes, now they're seeing your desktop. So go back to CEDS. Okay, great. Thank you, guys.
We're back. Awesome. Okay, so we're back over here taking a look at the domain entity schema. And as I mentioned, we have the different 5 domains. The other domains that live outside of here would impact across any of the others. So you have assessments. Any person could be assessed, whether in early learning or K-12, adult education workforce. Credentials can be assigned at any level. Competencies, obviously, at any level. Learning resources are available at any level. There's facilities at any level. There's buildings everywhere. So these apply across all of the different domains, which is why they live in a domain all of their own. So there's different domain schemas in there. Your ability to take a look through, for instance, early learning, you could navigate through, take a look at the child, maybe look at health, take a look at birth prenatal if you wanted to get to an element like weight at birth. So there's different elements inside of CEDS. That's the domain entity schema, and so the updates that were made allow either reorganizing it a little bit better to make it easier to find different elements, or also taking elements that make sense inside of early learning and inside of K-12 and adding it, across the different domains if elements are repeatable or they exist in and with across domains. So that's one of the changes that was made. And then the other thing that I wanted to navigate to was the elements page. Here you can obviously go to the domain entity schema where we were just at, but over here you can download it as an Excel file if you wanted to pull down every CEDS element, all the definitions, the domains. Previous versions can be downloaded here. But in the middle here is where you go to view the actual version 8 elements, and it has the ability to search for various elements if you'd like to search. But if you want to know what was updated or what's new, you can click here. It's going to immediately bring up the new elements. So as you can see, these are the elements that have been added to CEDS. So you can take the time if you want to review what's been added. It immediately gives you those. If you want to take the time to review all of the different elements that have been updated, then you can click on the updated, and it's going to show you all of the, as I mentioned, 136 records or elements that have been updated. And for any of these, you can click to view more information about it, competency definition code. As we mentioned, a lot of the changes made to competency or credentials. It'll show you the changes that were actually made. So the entity name was changed from competency item to competency definition to support alignment across standards and reduce confusion by those who think it's an assertion versus it actually being a definition. So those are the changes that were made. We're primarily adding the word definition in to all of the different elements for competency or credential. There are some other changes that have been made as well, and you can read the changes related to the elements by going to that change note in each of the different elements. The last thing I want to show you, which will, then we'll head to the next slide, is just the location of the normalized data schema. As you can see here under data model, we do have normalized data schema. And why I want to show you this is because actually there's going to be a rebranding. The CEDS NDS normalized data schema has been rebranded to the CEDS integrated data store, or IDS. You'll still see it under the data model as normalized data schema. That's to give some time for those who are familiar with it and have used it in the past to locate it still and know where it's at, and then become familiar with the new terminology of integrated data store. And so after several months, at some point we're going to make the switch, and it'll no longer say normalized data schema under data model, but we'll then change that as well to integrated data store. We left it there just for now so that, I guess, again, as folks who in the past have used it can still navigate to this location and then discover that we've actually changed the name and the resources have been moved over to the GitHub site. So I'm going to go back over here, and I'm going to pull this back out, I believe. And we're going to bring the PowerPoint back in.
Andrea will bring it back in for us.
Good job, Andrea. So I will talk briefly about, while she's bringing that back in, one of the larger changes that was made with the CEDS integrated data store, and that, as I mentioned, was the rebranding. So it was formerly known as the normalized data schema. The CEDS integrated data store is being implemented in multiple states, and as we've come to discover, even in multiple countries. So it is a third normal form database, and its structure contains a logical integration of every CEDS element. And if, Andrea, if you could advance to that slide there, that'd be helpful. Thank you. The IDS can be used to integrate education data across all of the P20W domains: early childhood, K-12, post-secondary, adult and career and technical education, workforce, all of those ones that we had mentioned before. Thank you. All of the IDS documentation, formerly again known as the Normalized Data Schema, now the IDS, that used to be on the CEDS.ed site has now been moved over to the CEDS open source GitHub site. So with an ever-increasing number of implementations, the GitHub site is going to provide a means for faster release cycles, so we moved everything over to there. And there's a link to it from that one page I just showed you for the Normalized Data Schema that can get you over to the GitHub site, and that's where you'll find all the documentation, the scripts to build it, scripts to update it, scripts for the reference tables, all the various different things that you would need are over there in that location. Additionally, the versioning on the CEDS GitHub site is going to be explicit versioning, as you've seen here. Now, the versioning on the CEDS.ed.gov site, which you're used to seeing the release like we just saw, CEDS version 8, that's going to remain incremental, as you've seen in the past. It still have a yearly cycle, so you can expect to see a version 9 around this time next year, right? So just like you've always expected. On the GitHub site, however, incremental changes or pre-releases of approved changes to the standard are going to be available and happening throughout the year. So on the open source site, the GitHub site, we will be using a 4-digit customized explicit versioning. The first digit is going to represent the alignment release. So until around this time next year, it's going to stay at 8. So that first digit is going to stay at 8. The elements, so we have it broken into different sections in the repository. The elements are managed in one location. The integrated data store is managed in another location. And when we release the CEDS data warehouse, that will be managed in a separate repository. So 3 different repositories: elements, IDS, data warehouse. And until around this next time next year, that first digit for each of those will remain at 8. So right now, with the release just happening, CEDS version 8 is just out. The elements are versioned at 8.0.0.0. The integrated data store is versioned at 8.0.0.0. And when the data warehouse comes out, it'll be versioned at 8.0.0.0, right? Everything's aligned. So that's the alignment release. The first number for each of those is going to remain at 8 until around next year this time, but the rest of the numbers are going to change based on the impact to the product itself or to the repository. So the impact will be the second digit, represents a breaking change. So if it went to 8.1.0.0, you would know there's a breaking change. We changed the definition of an element drastically, or we deprecated elements that you might have. So things like that might occur. Or the IDS structurally was changed, and this structural change, the community agrees it's necessary, but it is a breaking change, right? So that's where the versioning, the second digit would come in, breaking change. The third represents a new feature, a non-breaking change. So an entirely brand new domain was introduced to the CEDS elements. It's all new stuff. There's nothing that's going to create any kind of a breaking change. It's all new. So it's a new feature. So that's the third digit. And the fourth digit, minor bug fixes. There was a misspelling. There was an accidental space somewhere where there shouldn't have been a space. So things like that. By the next time each year, each of the 3, the elements, the integrated data store, the data warehouse, they will likely have different versioning from each other, all depending on the number of releases and the type of releases that have happened, but they will all still have an 8 as the first number. When we arrive at this same point next year, we're going to roll all the products into alignment. And so each one of them will then arrive at 9.0.0.0, thus that alignment release number change. So all of the elements would then be versioned at 9, all the integrated data store would be versioned at 9, and the data warehouse would be versioned at 9. That brings everything back to like a complete package. Okay, so let's talk briefly about the open source process and how all these things will actually take place. So now that we've released CEDS version 8, what's the process for moving forward with changes to CEDS? CEDS has always been community-driven. It's always been free to use. The development process was a bit difficult to track, though, from the outside, as multiple groups would meet at a variety of times, and CEDS would work with different organizations to develop elements. And at some point, there would be this release for public comment, and everyone would be able to see the changes that were being considered for CEDS and would be able to comment on them. So what's changing? Well, the groups are still going to meet, and the organizations are still going to get together, and things are still going to be discussed inside and outside of CEDS. But what's changing is any additions or changes to CEDS will be introduced to the community in one location, and that's going to be the CEDS GitHub site, where they'll have a use case developed. And so anyone in the community can find them, anyone can comment on them. Basically what we're doing is we're centralizing the tracking process to one location that everyone can access, everyone can see it. So it's all going to be there on that GitHub site. You'll be completely familiar throughout the process of whatever it is that's changing with CEDS if you're up on that GitHub site and paying attention to what's taking place there. Nothing will change in CEDS that does not have a use case out there on the GitHub site. So let's take a look at that actual process. A use case is submitted on the GitHub site. That's the only place where it can be submitted to start that process. Anyone needing a change or an addition to CEDS can submit a use case on the GitHub site. We will meet virtually with that individual or organization to make sure we understand the use case. This is usually done within the first week of the submission of the use case. So we just want to understand exactly what the need is. And that's relatively simple to do. Here's the use case, here's the actual need. The next part is where the amount of time varies depending on the complexity of the use case. Is it a new element? Has the new element ever been defined by anyone or other organization? Who's using it? Who else is using it? Is there a structural change to the IDS that's needed? Is there a need for a whole new domain? A lot of questions, a lot of research, a lot of meeting with various different stakeholders and different organizations to determine how to move forward with the use case. If it's already been defined, if there's already consensus, great. We can always borrow the work that's already been done. Again, no need to reinvent what's already been created. But if it's new development, it's going to take some time to make sure we get it right the first time, and that means reaching out to many different groups and organizations. So this second step is just a lot of outreach, a lot of trying to just figure out exactly how we want to solve this use case, what changes need to be made to take care of that. Could be simple, could be extremely complex, just depends on the actual use case and the need at that point. Once we've come up with the design, finally solved it, for the most part solved it, and in a way in which we planned, we believe meets the needs of the stakeholders. That use case has been vetted through multiple other stakeholders depending on its complexity. We're going to put out the solution. The whole community now is going to weigh in. Now, prior to this, I do want to mention anyone who wants to be involved in the discussion is welcome to join. So if you see a use case pop up and you're an expert and you would like to be involved in this, or even if you're not an expert and you just want to be involved in the solution, or you want to be part of the discussions that are taking place, let us know. We are happy to include you in the second step of that process at any point. And there's even going to be, there'll be call outs at points. Like, we need other individuals to be involved in this second step for this particular use case because we want to make sure we get it right. So the community assessment, the third step is the whole group weighing in on what that second step group came up with. Like, these are the design we come up with. What does everyone think? That's community assessment. If there's need to change things or if there's feedback, they go back to the second step and do some redesign. But if everything's good at the community assessment level, we move on to the fourth one, and that's QA, right? So if we have the green light to move forward, now we do some actual implementation testing. What is the current impact to implementations in the field if we move forward with this? Actual physical implementations of CEDS. If any problems are discovered at step 4, we're going to go back to step 2, do some changes, and then make our way back down to step 4 again, where we make sure we have everything correct. Otherwise, if step 4 is good, community's agreed, then step 3, QA has been performed, everything's good, then we make our way over finally to step 5, and that is where that 4-digit versioning number we showed earlier gets updated. The changes are released on the GitHub site, and they are ready to be implemented. Even if it's not CEDS, right now CEDS version 8 has come out. CEDS version 9 will come out next year around this time, but sometime this summer, right, another version of CEDS 8.1.2.3. That can be implemented right away this summer. You don't have to wait until the next version of CEDS comes out. So there's going to be pre-approved, pre-releases on the GitHub site. They are ready to go updates done incrementally, and they can be implemented as soon as any organization using CEDS is ready. With the increase of implementations, stakeholders are needing elements that do not yet exist in CEDS. And already we have use cases. You can go out to GitHub and see them that we're working our way through. Stakeholders could easily just add a non-standard extension to the CEDS physical model to meet their immediate needs, but that's not standard, right? So turning to the open source community provides them, and it provides us the opportunity to standardize their need as soon as possible, so they don't need to customize, and their contribution in helping CEDS provides a richer resource to the next stakeholder implementing CEDS. So as we work together, we can accomplish a lot more. I read somewhere, and I know I'm paraphrasing this, I don't take credit, I just read it somewhere, but you can travel faster alone, but you can only travel a short distance. You can travel slower together, but there's no limit to how far you can go, right? And that's what we're doing here. That's the standards process. That's what standards community looks like, is working together to develop something that all of us will be able to use. Okay, so the next slide here, take a look. To learn more about the open source community or to get involved, these are the locations. Jumping down, that second site that's listed there, the Grad 360, is where we primarily announce events such as the open source review meeting. It's next week, where we go over all the various different use cases that are in the GitHub site, where we are with those. So that's next week, March 17th. You can get registration information at that ceds.grad360.org site. That is there. We also have work groups that use that virtual space for discussions and documentation until they're ready to submit something to the GitHub site. And then the first site listed there is the CEDS open source site, where the repositories, the code, the elements, the incremental releases will be seen. To participate, both require a login. For the GitHub site, make sure you choose the free account. You don't have to pay for it. There is a free account option for the GitHub site if you're going to create an account. Anyone, however, can view the use cases on GitHub without a login. So you can go straight to CEDS standards and look around and see what the use cases are. But if you want to comment, or you want to submit a use case, or if you want to participate in discussion threads or work groups, or see the different events that are taking place, you'll need a login for the GitHub site and for the Grad 360 site to be able to participate. Viewing, that's free. So that's that. Finally, contact information up here for myself or Andrea Hall. If you have any questions, please feel free to submit those in the chat right now, and we will give some time for any questions that you have. All right, we're going to, not seeing any questions coming in yet. We're going to hang out here just a little bit longer and see if anyone does have any questions. Feel free to submit those in the chat. But otherwise, that is CEDS version 8, and CEDS version 9 is well underway right now. Please go out to the GitHub site, go out to the Grad 360, have an account, participate, jump in, join in. We are happy to have your help as we work towards CEDS version 9. And I want to thank everyone for attending, and have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.